Listen closely. You ever notice how the one who walked away, the one who broke you, the one who left you questioning your worth, somehow finds their way back? That moment, it's not just confusing, it's haunting, because while you were lying awake at 2 a.m., searching for answers, breaking in silence, wondering if you were ever truly enough, they were writing a different story, one that didn't include you, not back then, not when it mattered, until now, and here they are, returning, quietly, like nothing ever happened, like they didn't leave a trail of shattered pieces for you to pick up. Why? Because life, in its twisted, poetic rhythm, has a way of showing value through absence, and sometimes the cruelest lesson of all is realizing how rare something was, only after we've let it go. They didn't come back because they grew. They came back because you did. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You stopped needing to be seen. You became calmer, stronger, grounded in your truth. And that stillness, that silence, it became unforgettable. So before you even think about opening that door again, ask yourself, is it love or is it just regret wearing a familiar face? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why they're back, and more importantly, why you no longer need them to be. If this speaks to you, like the video, subscribe to Stoic Station, and join a community of those who rise from silence, not to chase what left, but to embody what lasts. This is your moment. Let's begin. Her leaving wasn't always about you. It's easy to believe that when someone leaves, it's because you failed, that somehow, if you had said the right things, done more, or loved harder, they would have stayed. That line of thinking is natural, especially for men who give deeply, who stay loyal, and who show up consistently day after day, not for praise, but because that's who they are. But here's a truth many men learn too late. Her decision to walk away was never just about you. Sometimes people leave not because you lacked something, but because they were chasing something else, something unspoken, something they couldn't name. Maybe she believed there was more waiting for her, more excitement, more admiration, a new energy, a spark she thought was missing. And maybe she mistook your calm, steady presence for complacency, when in fact, it was stability. She may have confused peace with boredom, thinking that love was supposed to be loud and thrilling every second, not quiet and dependable like yours. But that's the thing about illusions. They don't last forever. When someone is searching for something more, they rarely stop to think about what they're leaving behind. They don't always see the value in consistency until they're faced with the chaos that inconsistency brings. They don't appreciate the quiet strength of a man who holds space for them, protects their heart, and makes life feel safe until that safety is gone. You weren't just a man. You were a shelter. While the world demanded more, rushed her, judged her, you didn't. You saw her for who she was, even when she was unsure of herself. You gave her space to be soft when the world told her to be hard. You listened without trying to fix. You stayed when it was easier to walk. That kind of presence is rare, but the painful irony is that it often goes unnoticed until it disappears. Her leaving wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy. It was a symptom of her inner restlessness, her doubt, her search for something she thought was missing outside of herself. Maybe she thought she needed to feel pursued again, or desired in a way that fed her ego, not her soul. Maybe she got caught up in comparison, friends who seemed happier, people on social media painting perfect love stories, or an old flame who resurfaced with promises and charm. And maybe, just maybe, she thought that if she walked away, she'd finally feel alive again. But here's what you must understand as a man who has loved fully. Her departure does not define your worth. It never did, because in time, life reveals things clarity cannot, and slowly, quietly, reality begins to speak. She meets men who speak well but don't listen, men who promise big but disappear when things get hard, men who make her feel high for a moment but leave her empty the next. And one day, in the middle of some casual conversation with someone new, she finds herself thinking of you. The way you looked at her like she mattered, the way you picked up on her moods without her saying a word, the way your presence made her feel safe, not because you controlled anything, but because you never let the world shake who you were. She starts to see that not every man is kind, not every man is present, not every man protects what he loves. And that's when the ache begins, not for the version of you she walked away from, but for the depth she didn't recognize while it was still hers. What she called predictable was actually dependable. What she dismissed as too easy was actually rare. She begins to understand that peace is not a lack of passion, it's the foundation love grows on. And suddenly, your absence becomes louder than any words you ever said. It might not happen all at once, but little by little, her world starts to shift. Her assumptions get challenged, her illusions begin to fade, and the man she left behind, the one who didn't beg, didn't chase, and didn't collapse, starts to become the one she remembers most clearly. Because you didn't fall apart when she left. You didn't lose yourself. You stayed grounded, you kept becoming. And in doing so, you didn't just honor your worth, you revealed it. So if she comes back, it won't be because she suddenly learned how to love better. It'll be because life has shown her what real love was and what she walked away from. But now you know. Her leaving was never your failure. It was her journey, her lesson, and maybe her regret. Let that truth settle in your bones. You were never lacking. You were simply too real in a world where people chase reflections. And the right woman, if she ever comes, won't run from that. She'll recognize it, and she'll stay. 2. The silent regret that starts creeping in. Regret rarely announces itself with thunder. It doesn't kick down the door. It doesn't scream or cry in public. Real regret is quiet. It comes slowly, like fog rolling in at dawn, barely visible at first, but unmistakable once it settles in. She doesn't feel it the day she leaves, not when she packs her things, not when she says she needs space, not even when she blocks your number or posts a picture pretending to smile. In that moment she feels sure, certain that walking away is the answer, maybe even free. But time has a way of softening certainty and revealing what clarity can't. And long after the silence has grown between you, regret begins to whisper to her, softly at first, in the quiet spaces of her day. It doesn't strike when she's distracted, when the world around her is loud and fast and full. No, it waits. It waits for the stillness, for the nights she can't sleep, for the evenings when her phone is silent and she's alone with her thoughts. It shows up in the little things she never thought she'd miss. She pours her coffee one morning and stares at the mug. No one remembered how you used to brew it just right. No sugar, a dash of cream, with that smile that made her feel like mornings mattered. She laughs at something on her phone, but there's no one to share the laugh with, no voice to echo it back with warmth. She talks to someone new, but he doesn't ask about her day with the same quiet sincerity you did. His compliments are louder, but somehow emptier. He holds her, but it doesn't feel like home. That's how it begins. Not with grand gestures of grief, but with a growing awareness that something is missing, that the connection she once had, the one she dismissed too quickly, was deeper than she admitted. And the silence you left behind, it starts to speak. She scrolls through old pictures one night and pauses on one she used to skip past. There you are, smiling at her in that quiet, attentive way you always did. She zooms in, stares, not because she misses your face, but because she misses how she felt when she was the only thing in your gaze, safe, seen, cherished. Regret visits her in these moments, not because she wants to admit she was wrong, but because she starts to sense that she may never find what she once had with you again, and that realization doesn't shout. It sinks. There's a particular kind of emptiness that comes when someone realizes they've let go of something rare, not because it wasn't good, but because they didn't recognize its value while they still held it. And the hardest part? By the time they do, the person they left has already started to outgrow the version of themselves that needed them. You see, she expected you to wait, to fall apart, to chase her, to hold on to hope. But you didn't. You chose a different path, the one of healing, of self-respect. You didn't post about the pain. You didn't reach out in desperation. You turned inward, quietly rebuilding the pieces she never fully understood. And that's what haunts her most. Not just the memory of who you were, but the mystery of who you've become. Because regret isn't just about missing someone. It's about realizing that the door you once thought you could walk back through might not exist anymore. It's about sensing that the man who once loved you deeply has learned to love himself even more, and may no longer have space for what once broke him. She won't always say it. In fact, she may never say it. Pride has a way of disguising sorrow, but that subtle shift in her energy when she brings up your name in conversation, the way her eyes linger on an old message thread she doesn't delete, the way she checks your profile and wonders who you are now, those are the signs, not of longing, but of silent recognition. The truth is, by the time regret takes root in her heart, the man she once knew is already a shadow in the rear view. You're not bitter, you're not angry, you've simply outgrown what no longer honored you. So let her regret. Let her carry the weight of what she didn't choose to understand, not out of spite, but because your silence was never punishment. It was a declaration, a way of saying, I gave you the best of me, and now I'm giving it back to myself. That's what real power looks like. Not revenge, not proving a point, just peace. And that peace, that's something no one can take from you once you've earned it. 3. Your silence confuses her the most. She thought she knew how the story would unfold. In her mind, there'd be tears, unanswered calls, maybe a message at midnight filled with words you never said while she was still yours. She expected you to chase her, to plead, to fight for the second chance she wasn't even sure she'd give you, because that's what she had seen before, that's what others had done. But you didn't. What she found instead was silence, not born of anger, not laced with bitterness, but the kind of silence that carries weight, the kind that doesn't beg, doesn't explain, doesn't perform. Yours was a silence that spoke of self-respect, a silence that said, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it to you. And that's what unsettled her, because it wasn't supposed to be this way. She thought removing herself from your life would create chaos inside you. She imagined you stuck in your head, questioning everything, unraveling slowly in the absence of her presence. She thought you'd panic, that you'd try to win her back, that you'd make it clear she still mattered. But instead, nothing. No texts, no late-night calls, no subtle online hints that you were missing her. Just distance, stillness, space. She refreshes her feed and sees you smiling, not forced, not for show, but because you're living, healing, moving forward. She checks her messages even though she told herself she deleted your number. She listens to a song that reminds her of a moment with you and wonders why the ache won't go away. Because silence, when it's chosen, not as a tactic, but as a truth, holds power most people aren't ready to face. It reflects back what someone doesn't want to admit, that they no longer have a hold over you. You see, your silence became a mirror, and in that mirror she saw what she lost, not just in you, but in herself. It made her wonder not only if you've moved on, but how you managed to do it without needing closure, without needing to be seen one last time. What she didn't realize was that you were never silent to manipulate her emotions. You were silent because you had already said everything you needed to say, with your actions, with your presence, with your love. And when it was no longer received, you stopped offering what was no longer appreciated. You didn't withdraw to punish her. You withdrew to protect yourself. And in doing so, you became unforgettable, not because you vanished, but because you remained grounded in a world that expects chaos. Because you didn't reach for attention when your energy was no longer valued. Because you didn't try to win someone back who treated your loyalty like a guarantee. There is something hauntingly powerful about a man who refuses to beg for love. A man who doesn't need applause to feel worthy. A man who, even in heartbreak, chooses peace over performance. And in time, she will understand that your silence wasn't a void. It was a message, one that said, "I don't chase what doesn't choose me." And no matter who she meets next, that kind of silence will echo longer than any words ever could. 4. Your growth made you untouchable. There's a kind of transformation that doesn't happen through books or mentors or perfect plans. It's born in the aftermath of heartbreak, when the person you gave your heart to walks away and leaves behind silence, confusion, and a wound you didn't ask for. And yet, from that very wound, something stronger begins to rise. You didn't just survive what she did to you. You didn't just sit with the pain. You worked with it. You let it burn through your illusions, your need for external validation, your desire to be chosen by someone who didn't see you clearly. You turned inward, not in retreat, but in renewal. You began to rebuild, slowly, quietly, consistently. At first, maybe it was just about getting out of bed again. Then it was going for a walk, then the gym, then a new project, then therapy, then laughter, then silence that felt like peace, not punishment. You began waking up earlier, not to distract yourself, but to own the day before it owned you. You reconnected with people who truly mattered, your kids, your craft, your future. You didn't change overnight. You evolved because something inside you whispered, "Don't let this break you, let it build you." And for the first time in a long time, you weren't living for someone else's approval. You were showing up for you. That kind of growth is powerful, not the flashy post-it-on-social media kind, but the kind that shows in your eyes, in your posture, in the way you walk into a room, no longer needing to explain yourself. The kind that radiates from a man who has met himself in his darkest hour and decided to become someone even he could respect. And from a distance, she notices. Maybe it's through a mutual friend. Maybe she stumbles on a photo of you, smiling, healthy, present. Maybe she hears that you're doing well, not just existing, but thriving. And for a moment, something stirs inside her that she didn't expect. A mix of admiration and unease. Because the man she walked away from isn't the man she's seeing now. And what unsettles her most is this realization. You didn't need her to become him. You didn't grow to make her regret leaving. You grew because staying where you were no longer made sense. Because your purpose became louder than your pain. Because your future started calling you louder than your past ever could. And now, you've reached a place she never imagined you'd get to without her. You've become emotionally grounded, physically stronger, mentally clearer. You've become selective with your energy, protective of your peace, intentional with your time. And the truth is, she may admire you, she may even want back in, but she no longer knows how to reach the man you've become, Because this version of you doesn't need to be rescued, fixed, or filled. He's full already. You are not untouchable because you're cold or bitter. You're untouchable because you've tasted the power of self-respect, and you won't trade it for crumbs of affection ever again. She left a man, and now she sees a force. And that shift, that's what makes you truly unforgettable. 5. She realizes the mistake, but it's too late. There always comes a day. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes years, but eventually clarity arrives, and with it, a sharp, unshakable truth. She begins to see not just what she walked away from, but who. At first, she may have believed she was making the right choice. Maybe she told herself the love had faded, or that you were too steady, too calm, too predictable. Maybe she thought someone else would spark more excitement, challenge her more, make her feel something louder. She believed you were replaceable, a chapter she could close without consequence. But time has a way of revealing the value of what once seemed ordinary. She starts to notice it when life gets quieter, when the novelty wears off, when she's surrounded by people but still feels alone. That's when she begins to feel the absence, not just of a relationship, but of you, your stability, your unwavering presence, the way you showed up not just for her, but for the life you were trying to build together. She remembers how you didn't run from her darkness. You stayed and brought light. How you didn't flinch when she was lost. You anchored her. How you didn't need to shout your love. It showed in your actions, in the smallest, most consistent ways. And suddenly, all the things she once overlooked begin to glow in hindsight. The way you supported her dreams, the patience you offered during her storms, the way you loved with your whole heart, even when it was hard. And now when she looks at you, she sees something she didn't expect. You're not broken, you're not lost, you're not standing still. You're moving forward, slowly, surely, and with intention. You've found joy again, not in someone new, but in yourself, in your purpose, in the quiet satisfaction of becoming who you were always meant to be. There's a peace in your eyes now, a calm that can't be faked. She sees you laughing without forcing it, smiling without needing a reason. You're not searching anymore. You've arrived, and that realization stings in a way she didn't prepare for, because she sees it now, clear as day. You weren't just a partner, you were a protector, a builder, a man who would have done anything to make her feel safe, supported, and seen. You were the kind of man who doesn't come around often, the kind who doesn't just talk about loyalty, he lives it. But now, you're no longer within reach. Not because you're holding a grudge, but because you've outgrown the place she left you in. You didn't wait for her to see your worth. You became it. And now, even if she tried to return, she'd be returning to someone who no longer fits the shape of who she remembers. Men like you don't stay where they're not valued. And once they rise, they don't lower themselves to be understood. She thought she had time, that you'd still be there when she came around, that maybe one day she could circle back and find you where she left you. But she was wrong, because you're no longer waiting. You're living, and you've become the kind of man who is not only rare, but now unreachable. 6. She wants to come back, but you've outgrown her. It begins subtly, a text without context, a like on a photo she ignored months ago, a message passed through a mutual friend, casually asking how you've been. She doesn't come back with a grand apology or an honest reckoning. She comes back in fragments, small gestures that carry a single question beneath the surface. Do I still live in your mind? What she's really looking for isn't a relationship, it's reassurance. She wants to know that the door she once walked out of is still open, that the version of you who loved her without question still exists, That after all this time, she could still reach into your world and find a place where she matters. But you've changed, not in a loud or bitter way. You didn't set fire to your past or run toward distractions. You simply kept walking. Day by day, step by step, you found meaning in the silence, clarity in the distance, and joy in your own company. You stopped chasing answers, stopped trying to rewrite what couldn't be rewritten. You gave up on what hurt not because it didn't matter, but because you finally did. You started listening to the parts of yourself you had silenced while trying to love her. You poured your energy into your growth, your work, your health, your relationships that felt mutual and full. And somewhere in that process, you became a man she no longer knows how to reach. Not because you're cold, but because you've risen beyond the space where she left you. She reaches out hoping for crumbs, but you've developed a hunger for substance. You no longer find excitement in someone's uncertainty. You no longer respond to half-efforts or emotional ambiguity. You've learned that real love doesn't show up halfway. It shows up whole, and anything less than that no longer tempts you. So when she texts, you pause, but not out of emotion, just reflection. You see the message for what it is, not a promise, not a change of heart, but a reminder of how far you've come. You don't respond with anger, and you don't entertain what no longer aligns with your peace, not because you want to punish her, but because you finally understand your healing is not a tool for her redemption. And what she doesn't realize is this: by the time a man learns to be whole without someone, he no longer needs to prove anything to them. He doesn't need to revisit old wounds to feel closure. He doesn't need to re-explain his worth in hopes that it will finally be seen. He simply lives it, day in, day out, through the choices he makes, the energy he protects, and the future he's now building without her. Yes, she may want to come back, but the man you've become isn't where she left him. You've outgrown the place where your worth was questioned. You've outgrown the need to be needed. And perhaps the most powerful growth of all, you've outgrown the version of you who once believed love meant holding on. Now, you understand something deeper, that letting go isn't failure, it's freedom. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to never walk backward again. 7. The final lesson every man must learn. Her leaving didn't break you, it woke you. It marked the end of a chapter, not the end of your story. And in that space where love once lived, something deeper took root. Not rage, not revenge, but realization. You began to understand that your worth was never supposed to depend on someone else's ability to see it. You were never meant to bend yourself into shapes to be loved. You were always enough, whole, even when unchosen. So you didn't just recover, you rebuilt. Not to prove her wrong, not to win her back, but because something inside you refused to stay broken. You chose discipline over despair, clarity over chaos. You chose to grow, not louder but stronger, not more charming but more complete. And now you walk through the world with a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't seek attention, the kind that no longer needs validation to feel seen. You no longer explain yourself to people who never listened, and you no longer chase anyone who walks away with ease. You've learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you were before you needed their approval to feel worthy. You've learned that peace isn't found in answers, but in acceptance. And you've discovered that sometimes the greatest gift you'll ever give yourself is simply letting go. So if she ever returns, let it not stir the ache of what once was. Let it remind you of how far you've come, of who you had to become to stand where you are now, and let her presence serve not as temptation, but as confirmation. You didn't lose her. You found you. And that, brother, is the final lesson every man must learn. There's something humbling about watching yourself become someone you never imagined you'd need to be. I've learned, often through pain, that healing doesn't come wrapped in the answers we crave or the apologies we hope for. It comes in the stillness, the silence, and the slow but steady way we begin to reclaim our own name after someone we loved no longer says it. Her leaving wasn't the end of me. It was the unveiling of me. At first, I searched for fault lines in myself, wondered what I lacked, questioned if I had been too much or not enough. But in time, I realized something far more powerful than her presence. I had been whole all along. I just didn't know it, because I kept giving away pieces of myself, hoping it would make someone stay. What stunned me wasn't that she left. What stunned me was how I survived it. And not just survived, but transformed. I turned inward, not to escape, but to rebuild. I didn't choose silence to punish her. I chose silence to finally hear myself. And as I grew, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I stopped seeing her departure as a rejection. I began to see it as divine redirection. She walked away. I walked home. To me. The final and perhaps most liberating lesson is this: you do not have to chase what does not choose you. Your value is not diminished by someone else's inability to see it. Love given freely is not a mistake, even if it was left behind, because real strength isn't in how long you hold on, it's in how gracefully you learn to let go. You don't need closure from them, you need completion within yourself. And that comes not from convincing them of your worth, but from embodying it until no one can make you question it again. In a world that romanticizes chasing, proving, fixing, choose instead to stand still, to breathe, to feel it all, then rise without bitterness. The man who walks away with his dignity intact is a man no one forgets. Don't become louder, become clearer. Don't seek revenge, seek peace. Don't hold on to love that costs you yourself, because someday she may come back, not out of love, but out of nostalgia, regret or curiosity. And when she does, you'll no longer be waiting at the door she closed. You'll be too far beyond it, thriving, growing, and at peace. Let her memory be a monument, not a map. And let your growth be the story you continue to write, for no one else's approval but your own. You didn't lose her, you found yourself. And that, my brother, is everything. If this message spoke to something deep within you, if you've ever loved fully, lost silently, and risen stronger, then remember this: your peace is your power, and your growth is your greatest revenge. At Stoic Station, we don't chase closure, we become it. So if you're ready to rebuild from the inside out, to turn heartbreak into strength and silence into self-respect, make sure to subscribe and join a community of men who don't just survive love lost. We evolve through it. This is your station. This is your turning point. Welcome to Stoic Station.